大家好，我是德币集团运营的中艺设计交流中心的王威。现在我正在位于佛罗伦萨的施特罗奇别墅之内，为大家主持今天的节目。德币集团运营的中艺设计交流中心致力于打造中意两国之间经济、文化、商贸交流的友好平台。下面呢，我们就开启今天的节目。那么我们今天非常高兴邀请到马兰欧尼学院的老师来为我们做今天的主题，就是叫做时尚元宇宙，意大利时尚虚拟设计。马兰欧尼学院呢，成立于1935年的米兰，至今在世界范围之内已经拥有9个校区，包括意大利最初成立的米兰、佛罗伦萨、伦敦、巴黎、上海等等，在时尚设计领域独具盛名。马兰欧尼学院在建校至今的86年中呢，成功培养了许多时尚和设计领域的顶尖人才。2021年，马兰欧尼学院更是在 CEO World 发布的世界时尚学院排名中位列意大利第一，全球第七。So now we have a short video to give you a concrete idea and conception of the Marangoni Institute. 好的，那么我们刚才呢，中国的观众已经看过了我们关于马兰欧尼学院的这么一个短视频介绍。下面呢，我非常荣幸并且高兴来为大家介绍我们今天这个话题的主讲人，他的名字呢，叫做 Francesco Fioretto 老师。那么他呢，也是马兰欧尼学院的时尚总监以及造型总监。So today our topic is fashion metaverse, Italian fashion virtual design, and with such a pleasure we have invited the Mr. Francesco Fioretto with us to share with the Chinese audience this interest topic. So Mr. Francesco Fioretto, welcome to our talk show today. Please
Hello.
begin your sharing with us. Now maybe you can do
Hello.
a short introduction of yourself and the school.
Yes, of course. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, my name is Francesco. I am Italian, as you can imagine. I live also a long time in Paris and a little bit in London, and I moved in Shanghai 3 years ago to work in Marangoni, Shanghai, and connect the Chinese and Italian culture. And so in these 3 years, I've been very attracted by the Chinese history, fashion, and I think that this intercultural exchange is one of the main reason and main key of Marangoni Shanghai. So I prepared a lecture on the different aspect of Metaverse that involves creativity and also trends. So if you have a little patience, I will share my slides. So the title of this lecture is Meta Fashion, an allegory of the cyberpunk era. These are 3 points that I want to highlight. Here are some words that are very important to know. The meta fashion, also known virtual fashion. The second point is a cultural point, is allegories. And the third point is cyberpunk. So keep in mind these 3 words. The virtual fashion is a trend, is a new perspective that will involve fashion design and fashion designer as a job, as well as allegories are interesting inspiration research for the stylist and the digital artist in general. And the third point, the cyberpunk, is a word that we are reusing today as a trend that influence consumers' behavior, consumers' aesthetics, so has a strong impact on business. So let's start from the first part to give some explanation. So what is virtual fashion? This is a diagram, very complex, but I want you guys only to focus on the point on bottom on the right. So the little question mark, because the step of fashion, that is haute couture, fashion design, digital fashion design, and virtual fashion design, is from the tools, so from the creation to the destination. The destination is who is gonna wear haute couture, fashion design, and where are we gonna find these things? Digital fashion design, in a difference from fashion design, is simply using 3D and CGI tools and software, but to create, in the end, a real garment. The virtual fashion design is a new art, is a form of creative expression which create garments, accessories, bodies that will never become real, if we can define that. To understand this coexistence between reality and virtuality, we need to give some definition to ourselves. First of all, what is VR? What is virtual reality? How is defined? It's a simulated experience, which is, of course, very easy to understand. But what is interesting is this experience, this environment, virtual, can be very similar to the real one. So we have the feeling to be in a kind of real world, or completely different. So even a simulation can look like a cartoon or another type of atmosphere. We can be in the present, past, and future. So this is very interesting. If we consider the same definition to define virtual fashion, we can say that virtual fashion is a simulated, not experience, but a representation, and which can look like the real fashion, the real garment, or be also completely different. Now, when we talk about, we can imagine what is now this design, virtual fashion, we imagine something like that. This looks like a little bit at the first sight to a real model, but it's a 3D, if we look better. And is a way in which today illustration and art represent something similar. However, virtual and virtuality is not a new thing. It's something that in the past, in the 30s and in the 20s, artists and intellectuals have associated through imagination. So basically, we need to understand that at the very beginning, at the very early stage, fashion was presented in a form of illustration, and illustration was represented in a way in which was very different from reality. So photography for fashion arrived very late to represent. So artists and were inspiring fashion designers through the way in which we're designing their clothes and their model, which we can define them avatar as well. This is Georges Lepape on an illustration of 1911. The other things that even if we imagine photography, even photography can be surrealistic. This is a portrait of Man Ray. What is the point of this part? Virtual reality is not a new thing. Surrealism, mythology, old atmosphere, creativity has always tried to create a virtual, a fantastic, an imaginary world. So what is something we need to understand is that even if the language and the technology change, we try always to make dreaming people. At this point, we need to understand what is the destination of virtual fashion. Again, we have a virtual garment. We are not able to wear them physically. So who is going to wear them? The destination of a garment has 3 steps. One is the showcase, Fashion Week. The second one, the display, retail. And the third part is the body. So who is going to wear? The journey of the virtual fashion is the same as the normal one, just as a different language. We have been seeing, for instance, some garments walking in virtual show, like here, without a body, which was a totally interesting and new language. So the body was not just missing because of the avatar, was a creative choice to make the garment walking alone. We have started to have virtual libraries, not yet virtual e-commerce, but virtual libraries, yes. Libraries in WGSN or in other platform where we can download or we can take some prototype in virtual, and we can manipulate and adjust with some software or with the use of VR. Something interesting is the virtual stores. At the moment, one of the most interesting that I see, and the reason why it's very exciting to be China is to see how China is very advanced in the technology, is the Tmall VR store or Taobao VR store. This is an example of an Italian brand, Furla, who has designed a virtual store where can display some bags and also link to in a sort of like 3D VR journey, and then link to the e-commerce platform. Who is gonna wear? Well, of course, avatar. And if we say avatar, we need to understand that the avatar can have different style. A popular anime show, which is called Nana, very, very popular with the young people, has represented this character in crossover with Vivienne Westwood. It's mainly in accessories and in some different stylish garment, because this character is a punk, and Vivienne Westwood is the queen of the punk. So the fashion enters officially in the gaming, in the anime, in the 3D representation. Fashion designers are also avatarized. This is Alessandro Michele. Of course, it's not him. It's an avatar of him. He's the creative director of Gucci. And in 2021, was awarded the Designer of the Year Fashion Awards. And this ceremony of handing over the prize was done in virtual. And this animation show the style and how it looks like a fashion designer in its avatar. So the avatar era is a thing, is starting. We will see a lot of different social media, social space, where instead of posting our pictures, we will customize ourselves. We will try to recreate and restyle our avatar. And at this point, and only this point, we will start to wear and to style our avatar, and in the future, in the not so far future, to start to purchase some item. Then how we're gonna dress in this era? As usual, everybody has a want, and there's gonna be trend in fashion, and there's gonna be also trend on avatar styles. Now, all these things needs a transition to a step backward in the past, because we are going to talk about allegories. Allegories is a figure of speech, is a way to represent an imaginary world. If we want to create a metaverse, we have to use allegory, because allegory is also a narrative and visual representation where the symbology and the semiotics enters in the all way to design the characters as well as the environment. Generally, allegories are used in ancient mythology to represent symbols, to represent something that is also pedagogical way to communicate to the audience. But to simplify this part is when you create a universe, imagine a universe, you use an allegory. So if you create a metaverse, you will create an allegory. To try to simplify again, I will quote one Chinese allegory and one Italian. The most simple, the Chinese zodiac is an allegory, because we have fictional characters, so animals, who also have meanings and symbols, and they refers to extension of human personality. If you ask any Italian what is the most important famous allegory for our culture, they will reply La Divina Commedia di Dante Alighieri. Is the Divine Comedy, what we all study in high school, middle school, and everything, and they always tell you, okay, if you want to understand what is an allegory, you need to read and imagine La Divina Commedia, which I cannot read here because it's a very long book, but has been represented also through different type of illustration. To try to understand how the allegory can attract and engage consumers, I need to play a little game with you. It's not a little game, it's just a question. A trigger allegory is a trigger between reality and virtuality to make a fantastic world not true, but believable. Believable is the key, because let's ask ourselves a question: why are we so scared when we watch horror movies if we know perfectly that what we are watching is not real? It's not real, but we are still scared because there is an allegory, because the horror movies, science fiction, any visual, audio-visual, or interactive, immersive experience trigger reality with fiction. And this is, we're talking about billions of RMB, dollars, or euros industry, because is the gaming industry, is the cinema industry. The thrilling, the involvement is always creating a strong engagement, which I don't mean that we need to create a horror movie for for a metaverse, but I'm telling you just the things. Even in such a very fantastic and unbelievable environment, we suscitate emotion. So allegory is also the most common figure of speech for science fiction. And in science fiction, compared to horror movies, I want to make a point. Because science fiction are fiction when they are created, but somehow they always anticipate what happens in the future. And this will also help us later to understand the cyberpunk culture. But basically, if we think about 10 years ago or 20 years ago, there were movies talking about social media, virtual reality, AI, all these things, and they were just fiction at the time, and they became reality today. So we can use an allegory to create a metaverse. What do we need? We need characters, avatars. We need to understand the character design and style them. How do they look like? If are real, not real? The Simpsons is an allegory. All the characters, they are yellow, they have big eyes, and they are dressed in this way. And it's a cartoon, but we are still involved in this style, in this situation. We need a background story. So we need the storytelling if we want to create a metaverse. We need an environment. So we need a way to represent these things. So we need characters and we need the settings. We need time reference. So in the past, in the present, in the future, middle age, in the 50s, in the 60s, you know, when we watch a TV show, a film, a story, we also time travel sometimes. And we need a reason why. So why it's interesting, what can I find in this metaverse? So you have an avatar, you have an environment, you have a background story and a time reference, and you also know that connected to this metaverse, you can find something. And the last, but not the least, actually the most important thing is what type of media. What type of media and what type of device are you creating, are you using to represent the metaverse? And the media is the device. Because if I create something for my smartphone, is one language. If I create a space, a huge space as a metaverse is another language. If it's any other media and in a specific other time, any other new technology, whatever is the media, even very past, very traditional, why we always use metaverse. So I'm gonna now give you a brief, quick story of the most important medias, because allegories are used in paintings. This is the famous Last Judgment in the Cappella Sistina by Michelangelo. In sculpture, this is Antonio Canova, the Three Graces. In architecture, this is La Sagrada Familia from Gaudí. It's always like an environment. Every church is an allegory. Every holy building, a temple or a church or something like that, is an allegory as an architecture. In photography, we have sometimes use of fairy tale inspiration. A very famous one is Tim Walker, who always tried to represent fashion, quoting some fantastic world. In, of course, cinematography, it's too easy. I talk about horror movies before, but actually, I'm always when I talk about cinematography, I always try to show some mute film from like this, like in Buster Keaton, because it's incredible how they created and they were welcome at the time in the same way in which today we welcome virtual reality as a new technology. So the similarity in the past create inspiration from the future. I mentioned before the anime industry. The anime is it will explode even more. It is exploding today as an industry, and these characters, these fictional cartoon characters, will have to be dressed, and to have a style. Moving today, we have CGI, computer-generated imagery, which is, as I was mentioning, very, very, very strong today as a 3D representation, and can be photorealistic or can be more high-tech. In this animation that I'm showing you, you see the transition between the two languages, so high-tech and cold, and the previous one was much more natural light. Another media that we have is a VR, and I want to show you also something. The VR is not just an experience to enjoy. Some studios are basically creating virtual atelier, like this hologarment experiment here, which is basically a fashion design virtual room where you can sketch in 3D and dress up your avatar. And the latest technology, which is definitely the new trend, the most important things, the most interesting novelty today is the AR. So virtual reality is totally virtual. AR, augmented reality, is a picture or a video of us with the virtual garment, and is exploding as well in many different devices, in many different social media. So what is the purpose of the allegory is and how we can use the allegory in the future metaverse is to connect meta-humans, so avatars, which is also an extension of us. That's why they are extended personas inside spaceless communities, because the metaverse is unfinished, like the World Wide Web, and where the identities for some trends are becoming technological. So I call them crypto identities. This or aesthetic, this or universe introduce us to the third part, which is the cyberpunk era. The cyberpunk era and how this impact the trends for like how will influence the taste of the next consumers. The cyberpunk era is basically a dystopian universe, is a literature that was created in the 80s, and it was a science fiction at the time, but is basically happening today. The key word to define the cyberpunk literature is dystopia, decadence, hybrid, and artificial intelligence. So the dystopia is a sort of like a futuristic universe and environment where there is a high-tech technology and a kind of low quality of life. And by the way, the first book, the novel that introduced the word metaverse is Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson. Is a book published in 1992, and it's the first time that the word metaverse is created. And that's why today some trend analysis has taken inspiration from this book to define the metaverse, which was a very high quality VR. The other inspiration is that will actually help us to understand the society of today, so the social media connection society of today, as well as the artificial intelligence science, is the Neuromancer. The Neuromancer is even older, is a book of 1984, where basically, if you read it, you have 2020. So it's a forecast of how we live today, but in the 80s. It's impressive sometimes how this science fiction can anticipate the future. We have social media, we have internet connection, we have wearing technology. It's really a book that you cannot, if you read it, you cannot not think, you can imagine how this guy can be so accurate to forecast the 2020. And the Neuromancer in the 1984 is actually set in 2020 in the fictional part. The other trend which is important in the new aesthetic that we have is hybridation. Hybridation means like, and this we see is also in fashion, the cyberpunk inspiration is a mix between, in the real life, is a mix between a sort of like cyborg aesthetic, warrior aesthetic, and the real body, of course. Is a sort of like is something we can see in the fashion of Rick Owens or Undercover or Yuna Watanabe, just to quote three of them. This trend actually are also influencing the market of makeup and beauty, as we can see in these cover stories of a very important magazine and futuristic magazine, Metal magazine. So wearing technology, making up ourselves like we were a little bit fictional. Why this is important? It's important because the aesthetic of the avatars will influence also our aesthetic in the future. There is also a very interesting case that I find in China, which has a social purpose apart that a design one. The influencer Xiaoyang, who by an accident lost her leg, has been becoming a fashion wearer of this also Chinese brand, YVMin, I hope I pronounce it well, which is a jewelry brand who has designed cyberpunk prostheses. And this industry is a fashion and design industry for social and medical purpose to recreate body parts, which is also very impressive, because design is not just to decorate. Design is to find solution for human being. Now I conclude this part with maybe the most, the things that everybody asks me the most is, what is going to happen with AI? So what is going to happen with artificial intelligence? Well, I'm not a business guy much. I'm a creative guy. So I know that AI can generate today images, and I will explain you later how does it work. But also calculate big data to influence and forecast future trends, basically analyze a lot of data that comes from what we post on social media, how we act, and we react to searchings, clicking, scrolling. Every action that we do in our mobile is recorded by the platform. And generally, when we select something that we like, we receive something similar. This is just to simplify. But the most interesting things for creativity and art is how the new AI app are generating images from scratch by a simple input of words. So an interesting experience has been done by a platform called DALI, which is not this guy, is inspired by the name of Salvador Dali, but basically is a artificial intelligence platform. How does it work? More or less, you write something and these things appears as an image. And it's impressive how 1 month ago, the final illustration was, I was going to say, a little bit rudimental, but I found in these days, when I was preparing this lecture, a very impressive collective of AI, artificial intelligence artists, which are basically being extremely successful at this point. Look at these paintings here. These paintings are created by artificial intelligence. The input given is a little girl in the street, or we just basically write what we want to see, and the AI is getting as much as accurate in representing. And if you say that this is done by a computer, it's really impressive. And lately, last September, what is the what many artists have found very sad, but the future is coming. The future is going this direction, so we can be sad, but we need to accept that this is the first paintings done totally by a engine of AI, who has won a first prize on an art contest. So this is history. This is September 2022. The artist is Jason Allen. Of course, there is always a human behind putting the input. We need always to feed the AI to create and to suscitate new images. One last thing about our school. All the things that I just mentioned today are the key factor of our teaching methods. And we try not just to follow the market, but to teach the student what will happen in the future. Well, as I said, we will design not just clothes, but also avatar, and we will create different environment where this avatar will live, which of course is not replacing the real life, but is giving new extension space. So to sum up, we have a virtual world that is ongoing and to be designed with virtual human. We have an atmosphere, an allegorical atmosphere that will make our life and our avatar living different fantastic stories, which are the allegories. And we have the aesthetics of cyberpunk influencing the look and the trends of the future. This is more or less the big overview. I know that I've touched many points, but all these points are connected. That's pretty much it. I hope to have covered all the points, and thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to hear some questions from you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fioretto, for your fantastic sharing about this. For me, I believe for most of the people, this is a brand new concept and idea, which is the metaverse. So it's very interesting, very fantastic. So now we have several questions from the Chinese audience. I think they were very impressed by your lecture. So you just talk about the teaching activities in the Marangoni school with the metaverse. We all know Italy is a country with a long history, and the metaverse is a modern idea concept. And could you please explain to the Chinese audience how to apply the concept of the metaverse in your teaching activity or in Italian fashion education? And how do you combine the modernity and the tradition? Thank you.
That's actually a very interesting question. Thank you so much. So, refers to what I said about allegories that I showed the Divina Commedia or the China. Whenever we go in the future, we always look at the past as well. So as a counterbalance, as a sort of yin and yang, let's say. In terms of how we teach is more or less exactly in this way. So we don't replace what we have. So we don't replace, maybe we update some technology for sure, because in Italy, in China, in France, in the UK, wherever, the new students need to have a very strong update in the software that are used today. Also because the technology help the education to challenge the students in a more, always more professional look to their work. In terms of teaching methods, it's one part is the research and the inspiration, which is absolutely important. And in this, as an Italian institution, for us, the research, the inspiration, the intellectual process behind any work is absolutely important. Then let me tell you one thing. In Italy has a style, as Italian that lives in Italy are very attached to their patrimony, right? But I speak as an Italian who live abroad. That there are also a lot of Italians who live abroad who actually completely, like I say, I am become a very high tech guy here, and we are more fascinated about technology than what everybody can see or can think. What we would like to preserve is a very simple and essential Italian style because Italians don't like too much in terms of fashion. We always try to be more essential, and being essential and elegant is a challenge that we always teach to our students.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm.
So let's take a look at the second question. Marangoni is a fashion school founded in 1935 in Milan.
Mm.
So, being an Italian teacher who live in China, what are your views of the differences between Chinese and Italian fashion education? And could you talk about the future employment market, please?
Okay, the main difference that I see is the definition of the design. So I think that in China, design means more um, technological improvement, materialistic, like is to improve the things, even if they are digital or virtual. So whenever I've been invited into design conference or design confrontation, everybody was also like showing super strong technology, super interesting things, and me, I was showing something from the past, very simple, very essential. That I was saying so because in Italy, design is more here, is a process. So it's the idea is sometimes for us more important than the results. So this is the main difference. And when I try to teach also this part to Chinese students, they get it like it's also very they sometimes react even in a more interesting way than when I was teaching in Italy or in France because it's like it's a new process for them. At the same time, I want to say also what I learned, what we can be inspired by the Chinese method on teaching art and fashion is exactly in raising the challenge. Always, you always raise the challenge to do more, to do in a very impressive way. So whenever something is achieved, it's not enough, and you always like trying to improve, to improve better. Is actually the question that the question that an Italian student will always ask me is, "Do you like it?" A question that a Chinese students always ask me, "How can I improve?" This is for me is the key, and of course, it's a very general difference, but this is the most. And for the for the employability, while this in the fashion industry, this new opportunity for these new spaces that are created through the metaverse, as I mentioned, open the door where fashion can enter in more cinema, science fiction, video games, avatars, social media, new spaces. So the fact that we will have to dress not just the human being, and we are a lot, but also their avatar that can surely open a new market. But not yet tomorrow, not now. I think we will need still a little bit of time to give a value to a virtual item. To conclude, before we were saying nobody's going to purchase online luxury goods. See what is happening today. So, or it's not gonna, we're not gonna pay the same. We will have a discount. But today we are actually pay the full price online without any problem. So in the future, the price of a virtual pair of shoes will have the same price of a real one, even more expensive if we want.
Yes, it's true.
Mm.
So the next question, in the post-epidemic era, more and more attention is paid to sustainable development. So how can metaverse fashion be used in a sustainable development?
Um, I want to say I want to be very precise in what are my personal knowledge. So I can talk about the education process, for instance, that if we sketch something in virtual and is more accurate, and we can calculate in the digital software also the weight of the fabrics, the weight of the garment, we don't need to prototype so much, so we don't waste much materials, much calico, and also it's sustainable from financial point of view, and from also we create less garbage. But I heard also that people think that with the virtual fashion will help sustainability in a big scale. This I don't think, because we will unfortunately always reproduce and recreate new garments that we don't need. For me, maybe the retail industry can help sustainability, educate. Even in a physical store, we can see virtual garment, and then instead of the real, because the problem of overproduced fashion is that when we have a pile of t-shirts in a store like this, when they arrive here, we need to fill them up for the consumers. If the consumers arrive and see an empty store, will not buy. So we need to design cool empty stores, and we need maybe to use AR to fit, to see how something looks on you. We need to maybe order what we need and produce only what we need. When somebody, the dream is to produce when the item is purchased, the dream. I think we can get there. We can definitely get there. So the factories will produce more technology, more virtual item, and the less real one. But this will not happen again tomorrow. And we will need also a generation change to be able to buy something wearing the AR and not the real one. But
Okay.
in this way, I think that China will be a pioneer for sure, because the technology is welcome here in a way that I've never seen in any other place.
Yes, maybe in the future people can wear virtual glasses
Mm.
and to try their garments without
Mm.
buying them and then don't use them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think we need to conclude here, and thank you for sharing us this very interesting topic. And maybe I hope in the future we all can sit in a virtual meeting room in a
Mm.
metaverse conference room to meet
Mm.
together because I stay here in Florence, you stayed in another place. So
Yeah.
only by the technological means we can
Mm.
stay together to trying to reduce the distance between the people.
That's for sure. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.好的，那
OK，
么我们今
好的。
天的分享就已经到这里结束了，感谢大家的聆听，我们希望有机会下次再跟大家见面，谢谢。